that, we're absolutely delighted to have with us today Dervilla O'Brien. Dervilla works with business owners, executives, and startups to help them achieve their business goals, and not just to survive, but to thrive. Dervilla works with clients on new approaches for leaders and their teams, sales professional development, sales process development, and she achieves this through workshops or individual coaching. She's also been a program manager for the EIT Health Digital Validator, which ran in Trinity College Dublin 2 years in a row. Dervilla is the founder of HealthBridge Technology, and she's a mentor for the EIT Health Mentoring and Coaching Network, if you wish to avail of her time in one of those one-to-one professional development sessions. And a reminder from the process perspective that this and all of our Startup Toolbox webinars are being recorded. So as they say on the radio, don't swear. You can use the Q&A function if you have any questions for Dervilla or for the panel. We'll check those periodically. And there's also the chat function there as well. Do try to keep your questions into the Q&A, because it's just a lot easier for Dervilla to track that while she's also trying to remember what her slides are. And yeah, that's it. We will also, we have some worksheets that have been sent to you. If you've registered, you should have received an email. Check your spam if you need to. And if something has gone missing, you can pop a little message in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get that to you. You can send it to panelists and your email address, and we'll make sure that it's there. So without further ado, over to Dervilla, and I'm going to switch off my camera.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. Thank you all very much for joining us today. And I hope the next 90 minutes, I'm going to take you through a number of topics which will help you sell your early stage company and your idea, depending on where you are right now. And I guess my own background is, before I got involved with digital health, is that I actually worked in the fast-moving consumer goods industry. So I sold snack food, and I sold soft drinks, and I sold lots of other things. And in fact, it was one of the things I discovered when I went into digital health, is that these skills stood to me when I was talking to medical people and funders and so on, that we're always selling. So one of the things I find working with a lot of early stage companies is that they know a lot about the technology and they know a lot about their solution, but quite often they lack confidence when it comes to selling. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you permission to stop selling. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about persuading and influencing, because we're not selling secondhand cars here. So we'll start with beliefs. Then we'll talk about the influencing skills. We'll lead into some things, some slides on thought leadership, how to ask for referrals. And as we go, we'll have 3 short exercises. Rosemary mentioned the worksheets already, and I will stop. I have a couple of natural breaks there, which will allow for me to check the Q&A and just see how any questions that you may have. So the first thing I'm going to ask is kind of a question, which is, what makes a successful salesperson? And I usually ask this in a room full of people, and they'll give me a whole pile of descriptors. And there's lots of different types of salespeople, just as there are lots of different types of customers. But there are some particular characteristics that, in my experience, which is very long at this stage, are common to really good salespeople, regardless of whether they're selling you a medical solution or a car or a lipstick. And the first things, I'll put them up here. The first thing is to be genuinely interested, not faking it, but really, really interested in the customer at whatever level that customer is. So whether it's a healthcare professional or a patient or the carer of somebody who may be using your solution. Listening skills. This always comes up in every conversation around selling, and being able to listen is absolutely vital. And it's great to be enthusiastic and confident. And usually early stage companies are high on the enthusiasm, but they may not always be high on the confidence. So we'll take you through some techniques that will help you build that. Another thing is being persistent. And I often get asked, well, when am I, I want to be persistent, but I don't want to become a stalker. So it's about keep following through without becoming a certified stalker. And the key to that is actually good manners. So good manners, your granny was right. Good manners will stand to you regardless of where you are. So please, thank you, follow up. All of those things are good manners. Thorough product knowledge, of course, it's there. You have to know your stuff. Good personal presentation. And even in these Zoom days and online meetings where we're not meeting face to face, if you've got a video call, you need to look believable and credible. So I'm not saying you have to wear a suit and tie, but you need to look polished and professional. Clear communication is vital. Consistent follow through. I think I've mentioned that several times already. And also being able to respond to objections. Now, I don't have time to go into handling objections with you here today, but it is really important that it's a skill that you develop over time. So regardless of whether you're face-to-face with somebody, if you're doing remote selling or on the phone, whatever it may be, all of these characteristics are valid. So if they're the characteristics, how do I apply them? And really, this is about getting back to the basics. And for everybody in sales, regardless of how experienced you are, the first thing is, what do I believe about my ability to sell? And what I'm going to do now is, because this is one of the questions that came up, and there's a lot of you here, so I'm going to launch a poll, and I'm going to ask you that very question. So just tell me, how confident are you about your ability to sell? So I'm hoping everybody can see that poll up there now. Yeah, you're starting to answer it. I think I've 5 options there. Just scroll down. Yeah. Oh, we have a few who are quite confident. That's good to see. Okay. We'll give a few more, give you another minute. I think I'd say that's about the number we're going to get at this stage. So, okay, so there's very few I've never sold anything in my life. That's why I'm here. And then I'm looking at it and saying, so, okay, I'm a bit uncomfortable. There's only me. I'm okay at selling for other people. And again, it's that business. Well, if I was selling for somebody else, I'd be a lot more confident now. So there's quite a few of you in that category. So there's more than 50% of you there, nearly confident, and pretty confident, about 1/5 of you there. So that gives me an idea. So we have a range of people across in terms of your confidence levels, and that's okay. I'll just share the results there for you. Okay. So that's where my belief is about my ability to sell, and that's where we start. We start with what my head says, because that determines my behavior. And then we measure results, use the information, and learn. And the way we do that is, okay, so we'll start with, we start with the belief, which you've just established there. So this, you're about half and half. I'm really lacking in confidence too. I'm okay, but I'd like to be a little bit better. And this is where the behavior comes in. And there's a famous saying from Henry Ford, which is, if you believe you can do a thing or believe you can't, you're right. And that leads me into limiting beliefs. And I'm going to talk to you about limiting beliefs. You may not have heard of these before. And what a limiting belief is, it's kind of a mental shorthand, or a mental bouncer, if you will, because we're bombarded with lots and lots of different messages coming at us all the time. And if we processed everything, all the data that was coming into us as it came in, do you know what? We'd be exhausted and we'd never get through it. So when you think about when you're a child, right, you interpreted the world through your parents. The people who looked after you. And if they told you something was true, you probably believed it. So I'll just take you through how it's structured and an example, and then see where it brings us. So you start with belief. So when I was a kid, for example, it could have been my mother told me that dogs are dangerous. Okay, so that's my belief. My mommy said that dogs are dangerous, so she's right, dogs are dangerous. And that frames my attitude. So my attitude towards dogs is I don't like dogs very much. And then that generates a feeling, because when I see a dog, I get scared. Okay, so I'm now scared, which influences my behavior, because I see a dog, I'm scared, I pick up a stone, I throw it at the dog, that leads to a result. The result is the dog bites me, that reinforces my belief. Guess what? My mother was right, dogs are dangerous. Do you see how this works? Now, the interesting thing is that, we all recognize these, and at extremes, you'll see things like racism are at the extreme of this. But we don't have to go that far, okay? So the good news is you can break a limiting belief, and you don't have to change the belief. You can just break it somewhere else on the chain. Along the chain. So say I'm 15, and I see a boy down the road who I really like, and I want to know if he's going to the school disco. I know that dates me, but anyway, let's go for it. And he's walking towards me, and I think he's, I really want to talk to him. And I see he's got his pet Alsatian Fluffy is with him. I'm going, oh no, I can't talk to him because I'm scared of the dog. Okay, so I'm scared of the dog, but I really want to know if my teenage crush is going to the school disco. So I buckle myself up and I go, okay, just going to go up, and I'm not going to say anything to the dog. I go up, ask him if he's going, realize that the dog hasn't bitten me. Guess what? Not all the dog. Sorry, let me try that again. The limiting belief is that the dogs will always bite you. Guess what? The dog didn't bite me. So I changed my behavior. I didn't change my belief or my attitude. I was still scared. Where that manifests itself for early stage companies is often in scenarios like this. And I've had this said to me lots of times, particularly in relation to digital solutions. So they say to me things like, Dervilla, I don't need to talk to customers. Customers just want to click. They don't want to talk to me, so I actually don't have to do it. So I'm not actually very good at it. I try to avoid it, because when I do it, I don't get very good results. So I don't really need to talk to customers. So that's the kind of limiting belief that often manifests itself with early stage companies. So what I want you to do now is I want you to have a look at that first worksheet that I gave you. And if you haven't downloaded or can't get it, I've put the questions up here. Before you start answering the questions, these are questions that I've designed so that you kind of ask yourself, what are my limiting beliefs? And I'm going to give you 5 minutes of this. But just to highlight a couple of the questions, you can read them in your own time. But for example, question 6, how do I measure my sales activity before closing sales? So you haven't got products to sell yet. So sales activity could be like getting users to try your product. It could be conducting customer discovery interviews. It could be securing a pilot. So all of these could be sales activities, but you're not actually selling anything. So that's the kind of thing that might be your example. It'll be different for each company. And the second one that I'm just going to mention here is what busy work am I doing that distracts me? So a classic example of that is somebody who has a minimum viable product or a prototype and never deploys it because they're always tweaking it. They're always doing something new. They're always changing it. And what they're effectively doing is avoiding launching because they're afraid of being told there's a problem, or being told, no, we don't want it. So they hide behind the busy work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my timer here for 5 minutes. And I'd like you to answer those questions for yourself. Okay, and the timer is on now. If anybody has any questions about those, put it up in the Q&A and I'll try and clarify.
Hi, Dervilla. Can you see the question here from Photios? Could you please repeat?
No.
Alternative activity
Oh, sorry.
would be considered part of the sales.
Okay, yeah. So alternative activities. So it'll depend on your particular project or your particular solution as to what those activities are. So the kind of things that people in early stages do that I would consider sales activities. It could be if you're getting users to try your product, sign up, say if it's a platform-based software product. It could be securing a pilot. It could be conducting customer discovery interviews. It could be participating in, say, a digital health program, or if you have an opportunity to present to specialists or panels or talk to people, you know, so it's any of those kind of things. Does that answer your question, Photius? Great. The key thing on that one is, am I measuring it? Okay, you have a minute to go, guys. Don't worry if you haven't finished it. It's something that you can always continue afterwards. You might answer it differently by the time we're through this webinar anyway. Okay, guys, I'm going to call it there for this stage. And I'm just going to go through some typical answers that you might have, and it might help you figure out your own way through this. So question one is, we're an early stage business. Who's responsible for developing sales? I think that's a fairly easy one for everybody. And I'm pretty sure there'll be 100% people going, me, okay? It's myself, I'm the founder, or it's the core team. We're responsible developing sales ourselves. Nobody is going to do it for us. The second one then is may not feel like a sales function, but at the moment you're selling yourself. So what am I trying to get other people to buy from me? It could be position on you could be trying to sell your idea to somebody like Rosemary in EIT looking for a place on an accelerator program, or looking for funding. Maybe I need somebody to work, I need a university to help me with the research, or I want a key opinion leader, or somebody who'll help me conduct a pilot. So at that stage, they're buying you, because at this stage, they don't know whether your solution is going to work. So you're selling yourself. You've done that every time you've gone for a job interview. And number three then is, what's my role in the process? It's key. You know, if you're not involved in the process at this stage, I fear for you, because early on in the business, you are the person that they're buying. So you need to be key in this. You need to be driving it. You can't abdicate that or outsource it to somebody else easily. And what do I believe about my ability to sell or to influence others? Now, you can only answer that for yourself. And I think the poll has already given you some indication of that. And the second one is more about whether there's a market there. Okay, Rod. So the first one is my ability to sell. And the second one is, will people buy? So for example, during times of recession, I hear things like, oh, well, nobody's buying right now. So the kind of thing you might hear is, well, oh, they're only interested in COVID products. They're not interested in solutions to anything else. So if you have that belief, that's a really classic limiting belief. They're only interested in COVID-related solutions. I would challenge your thinking on that one. How do I measure my sales activity? I think I covered that one during the session there with the Q&A. So it's all those things that, you know, I haven't got an invoice going out, but it's evidence that people will actually buy into my solution. So it's users, it's pilots, it's people who have endorsed my product or recommended it somewhere else. The busy work, as I said, my classic example is I'm so busy refining my minimum viable product that I never actually launch it. So what sales activities am I not doing that I should be doing to help develop my business? I see lots of people who are afraid to conduct customer discovery interviews. And it's a real shame because you learn more from talking to people. It's invaluable. You'll save yourself time and money and stress by doing it. You'll develop a much better business by talking to potential customers. And how does that avoid help me develop the business? Well, guess what? Simple answer on that one. It doesn't. So hopefully you all gave that answer when you were assessing yourselves. And number 10, what does my repeated behavior tell me about my beliefs? And this is where you're looking in the mirror saying, well, I'm not actually doing it. So if I'm not actually doing it in a planned way, do you know what? I don't really believe it. So you're looking in the mirror on that one. And number 11 is really useful. Who do I admire most for their ability to sell? We all know somebody who we think is a really good salesperson. So think about what is it about that individual that you admire and you think is really good. And maybe, you know, say, well, what characteristics do they demonstrate? And the thing about that is, the next question after that then is, well, I could do that, you know. So I remember years ago when I had to learn how to drive and I was very nervous at the beginning. And then I thought of the dumbest person I knew who had a full clean driving license, who had passed their test. And I said to myself, well, if that idiot could pass the driving test, I can too. So I'm not saying these people are idiots. What I'm saying is that if you see somebody who's good and you like something that they do, you can talk to them, you can ask them for advice, or you can simply say, well, actually, this is how Rosemary does it. This is how Ala does it. I really like the way she does that. Actually, I could find a way to do that too. Okay, so I was just leaving a little section here now just for any questions. I don't see anything in the Q&A. I'll just do a double check. So I think, what did you learn for yourself? Have you looked at yourselves on that one? So it might be something to come back to later on if you feel like you need to think about it a bit more. Usually it's when we write these things down, it's why I kind of made you write it, is that it becomes real. And they're your limiting beliefs about selling. So the kind of words to think of, so people will say things to me, oh, well, Dervilla, do you know what? You're right. Do you know what? I'll try. Yeah, I'll try and do that now. I'll try and do those customer discovery interviews. Or I ought to. Yeah, I really have to, Dervilla. Yeah, I think I'll do that. And if I hear that coming back from somebody, I'm not really convinced that they are going to do it. I'll try. I've already given myself, you know, an excuse. Well, I tried, I just didn't do it. So what I would expect to hear is, well, this is what I'm going to do. I have this in my diary, I will. So that's the language. So if you catch yourself going, yeah, I should really, I heard Dervilla on that webinar, she's right, I should really do more of this. I'm not buying it. I'll buy it when you tell me I've lined up 3 customer discovery interviews for next week. And then I go, okay, now I believe you. All right. So what I want you to think about now, and it's the second worksheet, is I want you to think about what kind of influence do you want and need right now, depending on wherever you are in terms of your development. So I want you to just on the first column on that second worksheet, just the top 5 challenges. So just column 1, that's all. You don't have to fill out the whole page, just bullet points. What are my top 5 challenges? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 facing you right now? And just think about it. What would get me to the next level if I could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Some brave person might put theirs up on the chat. Give me your 5 and let's see what we get. Okay, I think I'd say everybody has 5 challenges written down now. So typically what I would see would be cash obviously comes up all the time. But it's not the only thing, because money alone is no guarantee of success. So it could also be expertise. There's somebody who has particular skills in intellectual property or in software development or in data protection. I might need an expert. It could be getting my pilot agreed, finding key staff or a co-founder, or looking for support from an established business. You know, I need somebody bigger to help me, but at the same time, Dervilla, I'm really scared that they're going to chew me up and I'll be left with nothing. Or maybe I need a key opinion leader approval, but I'm scared they'll shoot me down. Or the other thing I often hear is, oh, they'll want lots of equity, Dervilla. If I want to get a consultant medic on board as my medical director, they'll want a huge amount of shares of the company. So I'm not quite sure how to manage that. Or maybe a simple one is I want to go to a particular conference, but I can't afford it. Okay, so I'm going to go through how we might deal with some of these challenges as we go along. Because the first question you kind of have to decide is, how much of this can I control myself? Okay, so this is where I bring in the CIA. Okay, not quite the Central Intelligence Agency, but just think about, am I in control? So what can I actually control? I can take action, I can decide, I can actually do it. It's all within my own control. So that's the C. The second thing to ask myself is, well, what can I influence? Well, I can't guarantee the result, but I can help persuade and influence people. And then the third thing is, what do I have to accept? Do you know what? There is nothing I can do about it. So I just have to accept the situation. So that's the A. It's really important to remember is that even if I can accept it now, it doesn't mean I have to accept it forever. Maybe right now I'm not in a position to deal with it, but maybe in 6 months' time or a year's time, I will be able to do something about it. So that's the first thing to understand. What do I control? What do I influence? And what do I have to accept for now? And there's a great way of approaching this. And you'll have references in the resources sheet that Ala will send out as well. So this is Professor Robert Cialdini, and he has 6 laws of influence. You can find him all over YouTube, and you can Google him to your heart's content. And his 6 laws are very simple, and they make sense. So the first thing that he says is that the first law is that of scarcity. And that's really what you would call FOMO, the fear of missing out. When they're gone, they're gone. You've got to get in here now, get in quick, or everything will disappear. So if I don't get in right now, so that's a really important one. And you'll know this from your own lives. This comes up all the time. The second law is the law of reciprocity. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And quite often this manifests itself is that if somebody does us a favor, we kind of feel we need to repay them. We have to give back to them. So if I help them, they'll help me back. So give and take. The third one then is the law of authority. So it's about expertise or status. So things like if you're undertaking a clinical trial, so you had a session on setting up your clinical trials. Clinical trials give you authority. It's a white coat syndrome. I have the evidence. So the authority could come from a piece of research like that, like a clinical trial, or a very carefully crafted pilot study. Or it could come from a key opinion leader and their status. Because Dr. So-and-so said this is good, lots of people then believe it. Another law, the fourth law, would be of liking. So you will find, so people like you. So you will see this, you buy something on Amazon, you buy a book, and they'll say, people who like this also liked. That's an example of the law of liking. So people who are familiar or similar, people we trust, so in your cohort. So people who are similar to you like this kind of thing, right? And that applies, so in terms of digital health and med tech, it could be you're selling to a particular group of people. So whether it's healthcare professionals or a particular patient patient cohort, or medics, or whoever it may be. So if they like a particular thing, that approach works for them. Social proof then, I'm guessing everybody here has tried TripAdvisor, or we look up restaurant reviews, cinema reviews, and that's people like us. So that's where we go and we check. So that's social proof. Your friends and family could have it. Patient advocacy groups are really important, can provide enormous social proof in our sector. And then the final one is the law of commitment and consistency. So that is, so when by definition, early stage companies, we are high risk. Okay, anybody who takes us on is actually putting their own reputation on the line. So the chances are, if they have a solution, even if it's not a great solution and it's clunky and it has difficulties at the moment, they're not going to just throw everything away and say, Dervilla, you're the savior, come on in. They'll probably say, well, we'll try it. And they might say, well, we'll try it in a limited sector, we'll do a pilot, and then we'll see. So you see this again in lots of things that you purchase, where you get a 30-day free trial, where you're just committing a bit of time and they don't bill you till the period is over. So this is about reduction of risk. So by using you in a small way, they are giving you some commitment, but you are showing that you're consistent in your delivery. And that's how you build the trust and you de-risk. Okay. Any questions on that? Just checking in here. Okay. Nothing so far. That's okay. I was going to give you a 2-minute stretch, but I think I've put it in too early on. We'll give it another 10 minutes and then I'll give you a 2-minute stretch. And so I'm going to talk you through applying that. So if Cialdini has the 6 laws of influence, that's all very well. But as Alice said to me before this webinar started, yeah, I want to know how to do it. Okay, so this is a really useful model. It's called the Cohen-Bradford influence model. And it's really simple. When you think about it, we need help over somebody over whom we have no authority. Well, we're early stage startups. We're pretty unimportant in the overall scheme of things. So we can't make people do stuff for us, by and large. And it could be somebody who's resisting helping you. And that could be somebody who you might think, well, they should really like my solution, but maybe they feel threatened by your solution. Or maybe they are very risk averse. They think you're too risky and their job is to look after people, and they just don't want you to mess with what they've currently got in place. And it may be that you don't have a great relationship with the person who can help. That's life. Okay. Really common one for early stage companies. If we've one opportunity, there's that key opinion leader. I get one chance to talk to that person. And if I mess it up, it's very hard for me to go back. So for me, it's high risk. I get one shot at this. Or maybe I simply don't know them terribly well, which means I'm not very sure how to approach them, or I don't even know how to contact them, let alone what to say. So they're very typical circumstances in which we want to influence people. So what the Cohen-Bradford influence model says is there are 6 steps to influencing them. And I'll take you through each step one at a time. But in summary is we start off by assuming we're all on the same side. We clarify our goals and our aims, what's important to us. We actually look at the world from their point of view. It's not all about us, okay? Startups tend to suffer from this one quite badly, all right? It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the other person. What makes them tick? What else is going on for them? Dealing with the relationships and influencing through give and take. There's reciprocity popping itself up again. So assuming all are potential allies, right? So even if that person is someone you don't know or you think might be hostile to you, what we start off with is we don't fall into the trap of saying, oh, they'll never try this because they feel threatened. That's a limiting belief. So we find something that we all have in common. And for most people dealing with medtech or digital health, guess what? We all want better patient outcomes. So if we start framing our conversation with them around, well, what do we have in common? We'd like a better solution for the patient, or it could be we want a more efficient workflow, whatever it may be that relates to your solution. So we start off on that basis, regardless of how well or how hostile we know the person or whether they're hostile with them. And I'll do a couple of examples at the end, okay? The second thing to think about is to clarify your goals and objectives. So the first thing is, what is it that I need from them? And that's really important, because the amount of people that say, I got a meeting with so-and-so, I got the procurement person or the head of whatever it may be. And I go, okay, well, what do you want? Oh, well, I got the meeting. Yeah, but if you walk into the meeting and you're not clear on what the objective is, you'll have a long cup of coffee, but you may walk away with nothing, even if it's pleasant. So you want to make sure that something happens as a result of your meeting or your conversation with this other individual. So be really clear. What's the first thing I want? What's the most important thing that I want to have happen? What's my primary goal? And then what's the next thing that I'd like? Well, if I got two, what would be the next thing that I'd like to happen? And it's really important that you keep your personal goals out of it. So it might be really important for you to get somebody to agree to a pilot because you don't want to be embarrassed or you feel your company's going to go under. But actually, that's not their problem. So your desperation is not a reason for them to help you out. So you have to link, so it has to be related to the solution that you have to the person's problem. What's in it for me take that view for them. Not you. It's not about you. The next item then is to walk in the other person's shoes. So think about the world from their point of view, and this is empathy. Okay, how are they measured? What are their responsibilities? In the overall scheme of things, your solution may not be top of their list. They've got lots of other things going on, and what's their day job like? What kind of pressure are they on either from their boss, from their colleagues? If you're dealing with patients or families, it could be huge pressure from them. What's the culture of the organization? Have you thought about that? What does their boss expect from them? And what seems to be important to them? And if you don't know these things, and it's quite possible that you don't, then take some time to try and do some research, find out about them. There's lots of tools out there like customer empathy maps you can use to help you, but you can actually do a lot of research online about the organization. You can look up LinkedIn, you can phone people or who do I know who knows that person? You can find out an awful lot about it. You may have been in that job yourself in the past, and you may feel you understand it pretty well already. So just think about the world from their point of view before you go pitching at them. Number 4 then is what makes them tick. Okay, so some people could be, they want to find meaning in what they do. So it's inspiration related. They want to, it could be, I want to cure COVID. Could be that big. That could be really important to them. Then you get people who are very task focused. I want to get the job done. Some then are, position related, the recognition and visibility. I like to be seen as the person who is innovative and tries new things and who, changes things. I like to get things progressing around here. Or maybe it's more about relationship. I want to belong. I want to feel part of something. And then the last one then is about being personal, you know, what's important to me. So if you understand the nature of that person, you can actually approach them in a different way. And I'll give you some hints on that now. So for people who want to, you know, are big picture, are inspirationally driven. So explain the significance of your project. So integrity and virtue, give them the big picture. This is what we're doing. This, you know, so you will have a big picture version of what your solution will mean. Share that with them. The task relation one is, don't spend too much time doing all the big vision stuff with them. This is all about being, if you want to influence them, I can help you do this. I can do that for you. So it will be much more about the workflow, the efficiency. We've got the numbers. I wouldn't be keeping about, you know, it wouldn't be all about the feelings. It would be much more focused on the evidence. So by doing this, you will save that. And I can help you, and here's how. Much different kind of approach. So for position related people, so how will they get that recognition? So, and this isn't about being cynical. This is about saying, well, you know, this is something I can help you prepare the presentation, and that'll show the structure of what we've done and the results. Or it could be that they could use your solution to help advance their own career. I wouldn't frame it like that to them, but let them see that. I wouldn't use those actual words. And people who want to belong, thank them. Back to good manners again. And offer them support and understanding. And for the people who have a personal related or driver, you know, motivation, is, you know, be sincere with them. Let them make decisions when on a team. And if it's somebody who's not on your team, then you thank them for the contribution that they've made to you, and you say, so when I realized by talking to you that we needed to use a slightly different approach, and this is what we've done. So you show them that they've actually influenced you. So they feel they've made a difference. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Number 5 then is dealing with the relationship. And the first thing is to analyze, you know, if I've got a good relationship with the person that I'm trying to influence, just ask. It never ceases to amaze me how often people don't ask. And lots of people will be happy to help you, but you have to tell them how. They don't know until you articulate it to them. This is what would help for me. So just ask. And if the person is a stranger, then you have to build the trust, build the relationship, listen to them. And then you can actually ask for them. So something popped up on my screen here. Okay, so that's the relationship. And I'll give you an example a little later on about how to build up that relationship. And in fact, here it is. Okay, it's influencing through give and take. So if I know they need something, I know what I have to offer. So they may need new ideas. They may need assistance at an event. They may need user experience. They may need something from you. Sometimes I talk to people and I don't know how to help them. And in the course of a conversation, a topic comes up and I said, oh, there's a really good link on that. I'll send you the YouTube link. It could be that small. It doesn't have to be huge. And they go, oh, thanks very much, Dervilla. Let me know if I can do anything for you. You know, so that's how the world works. So I know what I have to offer. And by making the exchange, then the first thing I do is I build trust. I show I've listened to them and that I've understood them. I show my appreciation for them, and I actually look for ways to help other people. So I don't just do it on a one-off. So this is about being generous. It's not about keeping score. If you're open and you start giving things, amazingly enough, people start giving back. So I'm just going to pause there for a minute and just see what kind of, any questions coming up there. It's all clear to everybody, is it? Okay. So what I'll do then is I want you to go back to that second worksheet, and I want you to think about now you've already identified your top 5 challenges. What sort of influence do I actually want for those? And I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'll give you about 4 minutes on that. Okay. I'll take the slides down for a second. Somebody wants to know if the slides will be shared afterwards. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, so I'll send them through Ala, if that's the best way. There's something coming up in the chat. Okay, I have a question. There's another question come up in the chat saying there seems to be a lot of background personal work that needs to be done. How can someone avoid getting in the trap of constantly tweaking his selling strategy? I would assume that getting exposed, receiving actual feedback from people you have no power or something important. Okay, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, Photius, what I'm not suggesting is that I'm suggesting, yes, you do really good customer discovery and you get the feedback, but then what you have to do is you have to be prepared to launch your pilot or put your minimum viable product out there and actually test it in a live environment. The feedback, okay, when you receive feedback from people you have no power over, this is about understanding the nature of the feedback. So during customer discovery, you're targeting people who know the area very well. And if you do enough of these, that's why if you're on an accelerator program or you're following some of the literature on that, they'll suggest you need to do 100 customer discovery interviews. And it's not that the magic number is 100. It's that it's enough for you to understand, is it one person who wants that particular change, or is there a general view on this? So I find when I do customer discovery, I take my notes. Somebody in the beginning might give me a bit of feedback and I might just note it, but I'm not quite sure if it's significant. If 5 or 6 people start saying the same thing to me, then I realize, okay, now I have to do something about it. So that's in customer discovery. Let me see, is there anything else I would say about that? Yeah, so tweaking, I'm not talking about tweaking your selling strategy, but you will learn. The more you get involved with people, the more you learn. So the timer has just gone off now, but I will come back to this topic a little later on. Okay, so what sort of questions do we want or need? Right, let me just see. So I have just too many screens open here now between Q&As and chat boxes. So you'll have written something down now. So you're starting to see, I'm leading you down a path here in terms of, I'm only looking at 5 challenges. I'm not looking at 25 things, the top 5 for you. So who will I influence to make progress? Who is that person? What do I need to get from them? Okay, so I think now we're at 10 to 2. What I'm going to suggest is, because people always get stuck on Zoom, and we're spending an awful lot of time on Zoom these days, I'm going to give you a 2-minute stretch before I go into the next session. So the your 2 minutes are up. So hopefully if you've gathered a few thoughts there. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples maybe of things where you want to influence people. So here's a classic one. I want to go to an event. And actually, I see a question has come up there. I'll address that after this first example. I want to go to an industry conference, but I can't afford the ticket. Classic early stage conundrum, okay? So my needs are, I want to hear the speakers. I want to meet them. I want to get to the experts. I want a chance to be seen, and I want people to realize I'm in this space now. So how would I actually approach this? Well, I have to think about the conference organizer. So from their point of view, they want to fill the seats at their event. I'm giving this as, but it's not a virtual event, okay?
Sorry, Dervilla. Oh,
yes.
So sorry to interrupt. Do you mind just changing the view of the screen quickly so you can see the full slide?
Sorry, my apology.
No worries.
I thought I had the right view. Oh, sorry, my apology. Thank you. Thank you, Ella.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So they want to fill the seats at their event. Let's take it, this is a live event. And quite often they want to be seen to support startups. So if you ask, you may actually be in a position to get a discounted price or even a free ticket. Rosemary will tell you that during the EIT validator project that she mentioned that I ran for 2 years, I got 20 people almost free tickets to the National Health Conference in Dublin, because I just asked. I went up and I approached them and I said, look, guys, I've got all these fantastic startups here. They've no money, but they're really interested. You have a brilliant lineup of speakers. It would be fantastic if you could actually help us out. And these were tickets that were going for, €500, and we got them for 100 a head. So it was really useful by asking. But I've done that myself. I found out, when I was asking on my own behalf, I found out who was doing it. And I said, I played the startup card. I'd really love to meet so-and-so. And quite often they'll introduce you. So they'll say, oh, well, there's a speaker from such and such. And they may, depending on the event, they may actually introduce you to that person. So there's lots of ways you can actually influence these people and think, well, she's really interested or he's very interested. I show up early. And the other thing I do is if I see a speaker that I'd like to go up to, quite often if they're mingling and having a cup of coffee before they speak, I'll talk to them before they speak, because afterwards everybody else goes up to them and they're flooded with people trying to approach them. So I would approach the organizer and I would say, and I would do it, rather than just an email, I'd try and phone if I don't know them. I try and make voice contact, personal contact, rather than just a generic email. If I have to send an email, I'll say something like, I'm a startup, I'm really interested in this area. I'd love to be able to go, but we just simply don't have the funds. Is there any opportunity for a free ticket or a discounted ticket so that we could avail of this? Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. It works more times than not, because usually they have a bit of capacity. So that would be my suggestion to you. Okay, I've got a Q&A here. We have done 4 customer discovery interviews so far, and they're all from our own network, but we don't really know. Okay, now I'm really glad you asked this one, Tianga. I'm actually going to give you an example of that later on towards the end of the session. Okay, so how do we reach out to strangers to do customer interviews? We're targeting HR leaders and C-level leaders. Could you please share a bit what the strategies can be? I'm going to give you an example later on of how to actually ask somebody for a referral and a recommendation. The other ways of doing it is if you can identify them first. And then I tend to use things like LinkedIn. Who do I know that they know? I don't do a blanket email saying, hi, my name's Dervilla, I'd love to meet you. I find a way in. I find somebody to give me an introduction, or if I have to do it on the basis that I have to send an email and I don't know them, I make it very targeted to that individual and I explain why I want to talk to them, what it would do for me. So for example, a classic one for early stage companies, and I used this myself when I was going to a conference that I got a free ticket for, and I saw who the speakers were, or I guessed some of the people that will be going. GDPR, they don't tell you anymore. I sent them a LinkedIn premium message and I said, dear so-and-so, I understand you're attending the health conference and such and such. I'm an early stage company with an interest in this sector, and I'd really love the opportunity at the coffee break to have a cup of coffee with you and maybe ask you, understand this problem from your perspective. I really appreciate it. And I got, I would say I got 8 out of 12 that I did on that occasion. 8 of the 12 people that I contacted gave me. I was awash with coffee, but I didn't get 20 minutes with any of them. I got longer with any of them, but I wasn't selling them anything. I said, I'm an early stage company. I would appreciate your insights. Thank you very much. And as I said, 8 out of 12. Now, it took me a while to craft the request, but it worked. So that's the kind of thing you can do. And I'll give you another example later on. So the other one that often comes out in terms of influencing is, so that's a really straightforward one. This one's a bit more challenging. So this one is, oh gosh, should I partner with somebody else like a big med tech company? Medtronic might eat me up, or Pfizer might eat me up. But so how do I go about this? And I would say the thing is, I don't have scale. I won't be able to I might find it hard to access the market alone. I don't have brand recognition, and I don't have funding and resources. That's on my side. So I'm very needy here in this scenario. But why would they want to get involved with me? Okay, so quite often early stage companies, they just want to steal my IP, is what they tell me. And God love you all, most of you don't have much yet in the IP stakes. But what the interesting thing about the Medtronics and the Pfizers, the big companies out there, is they're pretty good at incremental innovation. They're very good at that. That's what they do. And they will do some breakthrough innovation. So that'll be a new category or a new way for existing customers to interact. What they're not so hot on is disruptive innovation. And that's where you guys are all at right now. So they're not set up for that. They are very risk averse. It's very long. We have randomized control trials. It takes us this long. This is how we do it. So for them, it can be really useful to partner with you. In the resources list, I've given you a couple of links to some podcasts that are very useful. I'm just going to check my screen here because I've got Startup Health Now is a really good one. And usually I've given you the links in the resources sheet. But usually what happens is technology companies, for example, in 2017 were bigger investors than biopharma in digital health. So that tells you something, that I think biopharma now have moved on. We're now 3 years down the line. This year's figures, I don't know how useful they'll be because it's been such a strange year. But I would say if you're making medical claims, go with biopharma. If you're consumer facing, it's more likely to be a technology company that you fit with. So think about Google Watches and blood pressure monitors, as your example. As I said, there's a link to a Startup Health Now podcast, which I think is really useful. So in order for you to make these decisions, you really need to do your homework on this one and decide, where they're at, and that'll help you figure out what the right approach is, because it's daunting, it's scary. But they're open to it. A lot of them have appointed digital facing managers at a reasonably senior level who are actually out there looking for digital companies. Pfizer even ran a competition in Ireland for digital health startup earlier this year. But the same applies to medtech. So when I'm talking about one, I'm referring to both. And the other one I would suggest you have a look at is Health Excel blog. They've done a really good blog, and again, I've given you the link to that one, which explains, the two different sides of it. So the corporates, this is for startup and corporate relationships. And I think it's a really good, useful one. And I love the fact that one of their recommendations is say no quickly. Because quite often, it's The slow no is a killer for a startup because you're still there hoping, and you're afraid to move on. So both you and they need to make a quick decision. So if I just look at the startup side, stop pitching. That's what I told you at the very beginning. Stop selling, start listening. You're consulting, you're sharing. This is a solution approach. Focus on the right person with the right message. Be clear, appropriate metrics, and assess that there's really a burning need. I think that's really vital. There may be a gap in the market, but the classic is there a market in the gap? Get to know them and understand they might be quite a different culture. They could be in a different country. They may have a completely different outlook to you. And I like number 8 there, which is think big, but start small. So that's back to that influencing thing, a small commitment leading on to bigger things. So you can look at those, that full blog later on. And my third example that I want to talk to you is, I think many of you would have attended Nicola's webinar earlier in the series on conducting your clinical study. And from my point of view, in terms of the influencing, so she gave you a lot of the technical stuff. She may have also covered some of this. If you've heard it before, I don't care. You can hear it again. It's really important because this is the difference between having pilot after pilot after pilot and going nowhere, and having a pilot that then becomes a sale. This is the really important thing. So the first thing is you must have a business case and you demonstrate that you understand their organization. It is not their job to help you understand them. They're not there to serve you. So you have to do your homework. And show you understand the reimbursement model. And I know that's really difficult for early stage companies, but if there isn't a reimbursement model for your solution, you don't have a business. Now, it could be that the patient pays or the consumer pays, and maybe that's fine. But if you're trying to sell into the public health, and I think you had a session on the NHS, you realize that that's not going to cut it. If you want to go to the States, if you want to get into public health in any country, you must understand the reimbursement model. If public health or health insurers are in your on your customer target segment list, then you must understand that. Really, really important. And show that your solution, how it fits into their workflow. Quite often people will be really good at explaining how it benefits the patient, but they forget that there's a whole stream of healthcare professionals that also have to intervene. So make sure that you understand all the stakeholders and how it fits into their life or their workflow. How will you integrate into their business process? Again, it's not up to them to change to suit you. You have to understand, and if they need to change, there needs to be a compelling case for them to change, but you have to make that case. Be clear on the outcomes that you're looking for. I know that sounds like a bit basic for a pilot, but quite often people just want to prove that the technology works. That's not enough. So you have qualitative and quantitative. Okay, so it's not just about the tech. So I'm hoping this is echoing what Nicola said to you earlier. And be prepared to walk away. Do you know what? Not every pilot is the right pilot for you. If they're stringing you along too long, and you've been offering them exclusivity, maybe it's time to walk away. You don't necessarily want to do pilot. At some point, you've got to sell. And finally, guess what? People will expect you to have failures. And in fact, if you're the very first pilot that they partner, they're your very first pilot partner, there's going to be some ropey moments. And so by the time you get to the second and third one, you should demonstrate that you have improved your process, you've improved your solution, and that you're better at dealing with it. You will not get everything right. Okay. And just checking, are there any questions coming up here now? There's a few coming up in the chat again. Okay, no. Okay, that's fine. We're all right on the chat. So the third section on that that exercise 2, I think we'll just take a few minutes to do that now. So this is your third section there. Okay, and I'll give you a couple of minutes on that. And so how will I frame my call to action? So what is it that I want? Have I thought about this yet? That's just a summary of the 6 steps. So will I contact them? What will I say? How will I contact them? What will I say? What do I want to get out of it? So what we're really developing here is a template for you to go out and say, do you know what? This is what I'm going to do. That you have a clear plan to say, I'm going to contact 1, 2, 3, these 3 people, for example. This is how I'm going to do it. This is what I want, and this is how I'm going to make sure it happens. So my challenge to you is to say, right, after this, commit to a conversation you're going to have with at least one of those people within the next week. Not next year, not after we're all out of lockdown, but that you can actually follow through on next week. I'll just give you another minute or 2 to finish that section. Maybe they've got a problem in managing their patient process, and I can help them. If I understand that problem, that's what I can do for them. That's my give and take. Okay. Okay, so I'm asking you to commit to having a conversation. This is your homework, if you want, for next week. And the other thing I want you to think about, and this goes back to your limiting beliefs, is what could stop you? What could stop you having that conversation over the next week? So people say, oh, well, they won't want to talk to me, they're too busy. Could you make the initial contact and put an appointment in your diary? Generally speaking, the only, what could stop you is yourself. Oh, I had a bit of a wobble in confidence, Dervilla. I wasn't able to do it. I was afraid to pick up the phone. I used to have a slide with a picture of a phone on it that got bigger and bigger and bigger, because the heavier the phone, the less you use the phone, the heavier it gets. So try talking to people. Set up a Zoom call if you can. If you can visit them face to face, even better. It's always much easier face to face, or if you can talk to them and you can make eye contact. So what could stop you? Hopefully nothing. So that's my influencing session. And I know there's quite a lot in there. You'll have to think about some of this afterwards. But what I want to do is I want to move on to thought leadership. And thought leadership, in a way, if you look at the webinars tomorrow and the day after, what I'm trying to do is kind of the preface to that is thinking about what is thought leadership. And with all presenters, we like a definition, so the definition from Forbes magazine, which is as good as any, a thought leader is an individual or a firm recognized as an authority in a specialized field and whose expertise is sought and often rewarded. Gosh, doesn't that sound impressive? But Dervilla, I'm only a little startup. I'm not really a thought leader. I really want to challenge your thinking on that. Because actually you are domain experts, because you probably know more about the particular problem, and you know an awful lot about the one that you're solving. You actually are a domain expert on that problem or that issue. And what you want to do is you want to start becoming recognized as a key opinion leader. But you're not going to become a key opinion leader if you don't express your opinions. Okay, so I'm just trying to get you into your headspace here. Is first of all, I have to think of myself as a thought leader. So my recommend is that I would start following the established key opinion leaders on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and so on. And start here, reading what they're saying. But there's no point being passive about it, because if all you do is follow them, but you don't interact with them, well then sure, what good is that? So start responding to them, add to their posts, give your view. You can share, and I don't just mean, a retweet or a reshare. Always add a little aspect that is your own opinion. I agree with this because I disagree with this. Here's why I don't agree with it, or this is what I really like about this approach. Give something that is, use your voice. And then you start, that is one of the ways to build a relationship. I know one startup that actually got bought very, very successfully earlier on this year. Tickerfish was purchased this year. And Avril, who was the founder there, she knows I tell this story. She started following a particular American key opinion leader in the area that she was dealing with. And after a while of, responding to his tweets and so on, he came back to her one day and says, I really like what you're saying. Tell me a bit about your own, where you're coming from. And she explained about her business. And that's how she got her first pilot in America, because he really liked what she said. But she didn't go in and send him an email and say, please help me, I'd love a pilot. She developed that relationship. So she's a textbook example of how to do it well. So you are the domain expert. Think about what you're saying, share your own thoughts and plan it, okay? So there's actually strategies, again, there's a blog I'll give you on this. There's lots of online resources on this stuff, okay? So you'll find it all over the place. This is a useful one. I quite liked the approach in this one, which is think about your purpose. So what is the purpose? You want to advance the conversation. You want to answer questions. And you want to gain trust. They're the three big reasons for having a thought leadership strategy. So the structure then, and I guess you're going to go through these with Andrea much more effectively than I will do it in terms of your digital marketing, but answer why is this important? And align your posts with your strategy and the business goals. So for example, this is not, funny pictures of cats intermingled with here's my view on patient outcomes, for people with chronic COPD or whatever. So just be consistent that you do that. And when we say about targeting personas, think about who your audience is. So that's who you're talking to. And work on your content. You can do a lot of this. There's certain things will come up over and over again. If you think of your frequently asked questions, they're probably the themes that come up. And try and have an effective call to action and invite engagement. So they're kind of the strategic approach to taking to thought leadership. So if you want to establish yourself as a thought leader, why would anybody bother? Okay, so because there's so much user-generated content out there, it's really important that everybody in the business is part of it. So some people say to me, well, I have enough money to get somebody to write my posts for me. I'd really advise strongly against that in the early stages. Maybe once you're established, you can do that, because your voice is very important and you're the founders. So it has to be authentic. So it needs to come from you. You can get somebody to help. You may not be posting in your native language, or you may not be, some of us are better writing and creating content than others. So you may get help, but the voice should be yours. And so really all I'm trying to do is encourage you to start sharing your point of view. And really, I don't want you to think this is just about social media content, because thought leadership is actually much broader than that. And it was funny when I looked at all the different webinars that Rosemary and Ala pulled together for this week, they actually all feed into that thought leadership. So it could be about my original research. Well, when I get my original research, I can publish it. Maybe I can present it at a conference. So that demonstrates thought leadership. Digital marketing, you're going to be talking to Andrea about that later in the week. I can be a subject matter expert. I'm my own expert. I am the domain leader. Even if I haven't got, clinical trials, I may have case studies. I may have an evaluation tool. All of these things demonstrate thought leadership. If I've got a nice little self-evaluation tool as part of my solution, great. I'm demonstrating thought leadership. And it may be the nature of the collateral that I offer. And what I mean by collateral is it could be the usage, the tools that you have. So you might have online help, you might have an app with some level of interaction on it, you know, how I might have brilliant training, you know, all of these things demonstrate thought leadership. Selling events also, and then brand and advertising and messaging as well. So again, that's going to come up in the webinars. I think it's tomorrow, and tomorrow's webinar. So these are all really, really important in terms of establishing yourself as a thought leader. So get that, you know, think about your strategy on that. And I said, I really wouldn't miss tomorrow or Friday's webinars, because they'll actually help you execute this to a higher level. I'm just going to check my time now. Oh, we're perfectly on time. This is great, because I have 10 minutes left. Just checking here. Okay, anything coming up on the Q&A? Okay, they're all things. Rosemary is taking care of all of those at the moment. So my last section, and this goes back to one of the previous questions we had, which is, how do I ask for an introduction? So this is asking for referrals, and it never ceases to amaze me how seldom people do this. So if I'm meeting somebody and they introduce me to somebody else, it's fantastic, because I'm not making a cold call. This is a warm call. And actually this, I refer to it as gold, silver, and bronze. So the bronze is permission to use their name. So Rosemary said I could, you know, hi Ala, I'm contacting you. I was talking to Rosemary Gallagher, and she suggested it would be really useful for us to have a conversation. Gave me permission to use her name. Then what I could do is, actually, Rosemary might say, but you know what, Dervilla, you need to talk to Ala. I'll do an email introduction between the two of you. Okay, fantastic. That's my silver referral. And then my gold referral is, do you know what, Rosemary says, do you know what, I'm meeting him. I'll be meeting him for coffee next week, post-lockdown. Why don't you come along and I'll introduce you? That's a face-to-face introduction. That's pure gold. And quite often, people don't ask. And this goes back to where we started from. It's the belief. So what happens? What are the two beliefs that stop people from asking for referrals? And usually it's either, I'm not able to ask for a referral. I don't know how, Dervilla. I can't do it. I don't know how to say it. I don't have the words. Or the other thing is, I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. You know what? If I ask, they'll just say no. It would be really unethical for me to ask them for an introduction or a referral. I'm not going to do it. Okay, so they tend to be the two kind of things that hold us back. So here's some examples of how you can do it. And it could be in the context of a customer discovery interview. It's a really nice way to get back in on the conversation and set yourself up for a return visit. So get your head right, okay? So the first thing is to get rid of the you know, what's stopping you is, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is they say, no, sir, I wouldn't be comfortable. You know, oh no, I don't give anybody referrals, or I actually don't know that person. Can you live with that? Quite probably you can. Because you don't need, you know, if you ask 10 people, you might only need 2 or 3 of them to say yes, if you ask nicely, and this brings back in the good manners. And the second thing is really important, is be specific about who you'd like to be introduced to. Because if you just say, oh, well, I'd love to talk to anybody. Well, anybody is nobody. But if I name a particular person or a particular job function in a specific company, that actually helps them. Even if they don't know that individual, they may know somebody just like them. So here's my 2 scenarios, guys. So I'm in the middle of a customer discovery interview, and this is how I might ask for the referral. So I'd say something along the lines of, thanks, Louise. You mentioned Stephen Johnson during our conversation. I think it'd be really helpful for me to talk to him. Could you provide me with an email introduction so that he'll know who I am when I make contact? So that's one way of doing it. Okay. Another way of doing it would be, oh, thanks, Stephen. You've given me great insight. That's made me realize I should actually talk to the procurement manager in, let's say, Great Ormond Street Hospital. I actually don't know who that is. Hopefully Stephen says, oh, that's Rosemary Gallagher. That's great, Stephen. Can I tell her you sent me? Or perhaps you could email me so he'll understand while I'm contacting him. It's really helpful. I'll let you know how we get on. So you can do that as you go. and you bring it in, because what you're doing is you're reinforcing. They actually feel they've helped you. Thank you very much. That's a fantastic piece of advice. I really appreciate that. I'd love to talk to her. Can you give me the introduction? And if she says, well, actually, I probably shouldn't, that's fine. You say, oh, no, that's brilliant. I'll just contact her and I won't mention your name. But at least now you know who you're contacting. It's not a cold call. And you can mention then that you were talking to other people previously. Excuse me. Sorry, just grab a drink of water here. So what I would do with these asking for referrals is that it's really important, and I'm back to my good manners again, is that you follow up on them promptly. If somebody goes to the trouble of providing you with a referral or an introduction, you follow up on it. And I would follow up on it within 24 hours. I would not be waiting weeks and weeks and weeks. It's actually really rude not to do it, because that's top of mind for them. Don't keep score. Don't feel, well, if I introduce, even if you're, in startup world and you're afraid, well, if I share my contacts, that Rosemary Gallagher one, she'll steal all my contacts. Do you know what? If you start taking that approach, it won't work. So if you're generous and you start helping people, whether it's with contacts, whatever, within reason, like don't be foolish. I wouldn't be doing it for my direct competition. But anybody who's not right in your space, why not? Because once you start helping people, you'll find people start helping you. It may take some time. Help your client help you. Be specific. I think I've covered that one. Tell them how you got on and thank them. So what I would always recommend, and I always do, I hope I always do it, is that I would send them the email, say, thanks a million for that introduction. I met Rosemary Gallagher. She was fantastic and really appreciated. You were dead right. You were absolutely right. It's been really helpful. Or it could be, thanks a million. I met Rosemary, really interesting conversation. The timing's not right for us right now, but it was really helpful to have that conversation. Thank you so much. I don't know how many people I've given introductions to over the years, and the ones that I give multiple introductions to are the ones that come back. I've had other ones that never came back, never told me anything, and guess what? I wasn't going to put myself into any huge inconvenience to sort them out again. Why should I? No idea if they followed up on the last time. So always thank them. And really, we're almost done here now, so our timing is pretty good. I want you to think about who you'll talk to. I'm just going to check in now. Are there any questions on this? Because I realize we've gone quickly. So there's a question coming up here now. What's your attitude towards NDAs? I have little faith or value in them, but it puts things on a professional footing. Yeah, okay. So this is in the context of a formal, when you're now talking to people. NDAs, Andrew, I understand why you have little faith in them, but I completely agree with you. It puts things in a professional footing. You're unlikely to have, the wherewithal to sue somebody afterwards if they do breach them. But it's a good idea once you start getting into commercially sensitive conversation. But quite often you can have conversations with people prior to getting into intellectual property or trade secrets and so on. But I would say, yeah, there's lots of good templates out there. It's very good practice. And I would advise you, yeah, once you get into that sort of more sensitive conversation, do an NDA, because it tells the other person that you're serious as well. But make sure that you've got one checked. There's lots of examples out there. If you're coming out of a university, your tech transfer office will help you with those as well. There's lots of fairly straightforward ones. Most of us don't need incredibly sophisticated ones unless you genuinely have some really significant IP. And you may have that in some of your medtech ones or solutions for the digital health people. It's generally difficult to secure IP. You're usually working off an IP mesh and first mover advantage and building up your reputation rather than IP itself. But I agree with you, Andrew. NDAs, good idea, because they show that you're professional. Yeah, okay. All right, that's that question. Right, we're just about done. Let me just check and see if I have anything else now. Yeah, I think thank you very much for listening. If there's any other questions now, stick them up now quickly before we go. We've 60 seconds to go. Ala will share the resources. I've no problem sharing the slides. And my real challenge to you is, and maybe I should have put a poll up for this one, who's going to have one of those influencing conversations next week? So that's your worksheet 3. Plan it out.
Dervilla, thank you so much. That was exhausting, actually, because
it was a bit high paced. Sorry, Rosemary.
No, it's not that. You've really put us to it, because I'm first of all feeling very seen about all my busy work, and now we have to go out this week and start making sales. No excuses.
That's right. I've got my whip out. Even though I can't see you all, I can see Rosemary's face. I know where to find Rosemary, so I'll be able to hound her.
There we go.
Look, we did go through a lot of content there, so you will be able to listen back to this again. So I appreciate that. It was a lot to throw at you, and it's not your traditional digital health or medtech webinar. So
it was absolutely wonderful. We've been chatting away, a few of us in the background, and it's amazing to me how this is applicable, not just from the perspective of startups selling their technology, but I start to see it in my own role.
This is a life skill.
Yeah, absolutely. That was incredibly engaging, Dervilla. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
The 2 other webinars that Dervilla mentioned are happening this week. We've popped the registration information in the chat. I can actually see Andrea on the line here. So it's wonderful to see all of these webinars speaking to each other so beautifully. We've covered clinical trials, and so many of the lessons are coming up again. I think Nicola really underscored that a lot of clinical trials are about protecting the patient, and I think a lot of what Dervilla said today talks about sales and integrity and ensuring that you're getting the right tech to the right people, and at the end of the day we're there to protect the patients. If you need to hit us up for some referrals, we have a very simple formal mechanism to connect you with Dervilla. She's one of the coaches on our mentoring and coaching network. And I believe that there are some of our partners on the line as well. Very happy to connect you to Dervilla. She's always somebody who is so good reputationally that she's always a joy to connect with people. And it's this kind of flattery
and I'm modest too.
Back and doing webinars for us. Thank you for your attention. The stay rate has been excellent, which just goes to show how engaging this all was, and wishing you all a very lovely Tuesday afternoon.
Best of luck, everybody. I hope to see you all launched out there someday soon. Okay, take care. Thanks, Rosemary. Well done.
Thanks, Dervilla. Well done.
Okay, bye-bye.